microphone in the way. Didn't see that. Well, now you know my secret. No. Let me pretend like I'm a professional. Scooch it to the side a bit. Ta-da! It's been a morning, so gonna wait for some people to roll in and gonna have some tea because that's best I can do right now. um, so I had a hard day yesterday, and then a really hard night, and then a really rough morning. So I'm gonna make some really easy tea. I actually want to make it kind of comforting because I find tea to be of a comfort regardless of what type of tea you're drinking. Like there's something about that warmth, right? But it's actually kind of our nervous system because when you drink warm liquids, it actually calms down your entire vagal nerve, gut, all that kind of stuff. Like I don't advise putting ice in drinks if you can afford it. Okay, so I'm gonna do the silver needle white tea because she just always comforts me. And this is in my new little teapot. Um, but I assume everybody can hear me loud and clear. I'm just gonna tell myself that you can. Because I remembered to use the microphone correctly, right? Let me make sure I've got live chat on. Okay, yes, I do. Morning, everybody. Morning. Hey, hi. How's it going? Like I said earlier, for those of you who might not have joined yet, I had a really rough day yesterday, and then a really hard night, and then a rough morning. So we're just gonna do some really easy tea time. Right? My nervous system can't take much more. And I'm gonna add some the white nectarine that you always see me add to my teapot. Yeah. So there's no way for me not to talk about you know what happened yesterday to lead into today and all kinds of stuff like that. And it's hard because it's personal. Right, but I'm also a human, and I think that one way that herbalists quote unquote get it wrong is by trying to pretend like they're like completely put together and have no problems, whether it's health or their like emotional well-being. So yesterday was pretty rough because we're working on figuring out what's going on with my daughter's digestive tract after recovering from a restrictive based eating disorder, right? And it's kind of just par for the course when you starve, your gut health has issues. And so we've been working on that for a while, and for a time I thought she had like her pancreas is a little unhappy. It's kind of sluggish, so when she eats like fat, she'll like get a stomach ache, right? But when I started working on that theory, like if she had bile malabsorption issues, it didn't really make a big difference. And so we sent in for this comprehensive stool test, and I'm like, oh, and it was rough because we discovered that she's digesting fats just fine, dairy just fine too. We thought she was lactose intolerant. What she's not digesting is protein. And protein malabsorption is really rough. And when your kid has like a disordered eating issues, telling them that they can't eat a food group is hard. You know, it's really hard. It's really hard to face, and it's hard to feel and see and for them to go through, but it won't be a forever. Now that I know what it is, I can start working on it, right? I just have to help repair some of her gut microbiome, and she's got an overabundance of staph epidermis bacteria in her stomach, which everybody has that because it's on her skin, but hers really grew out of control, so I have to push that back down. And so that was hard. That made for a hard day, like happy to have the answer, but hard to go through. And so that was kind of like, and then you have to change your whole diet, right? Like she can't have protein right now, and protein isn't just meat, so it's hard to be like, we're pretty pro meat. We raise our own animals and stuff, and like meat is a safe food for her. So not being able to eat it, brought her to tears. But I keep, it won't be forever, is what I tell her, And so, um, so that was rough. And then, we were getting through the evening, and then my son, he's a really awesome kid. He's, just as intelligent as my daughter, and they're like little clones of me. And there's no way to say it. He got hooked up with this girl a few years back, 3-4 years ago during COVID, and she's just a piece of shit. I don't like to say that often about people, and I'd like to put out there that my son and his girlfriend are adults, so it's not like I'm talking about a teenager. Right? Like she like pretended like her mom was abusing her, so she needed to move in here for safety, and like we basically paid for her existence through like 2020 all the way to 2023, and like her mental health is, I mean, beyond her mental health, like she knows what she's doing. And long story short, she's not involved in his life anymore. We finally got her out of the house. It took me time to get her to leave our house. It was crazy. Um, she got him to start drinking, and our genetics for drinking, Irish travelers are a lot like Native Americans, where like alcohol impacts us different than the average person. Like our capacity to become violently addicted to it is massive. And so he'd been sober for about 6 months, and last night he relapsed really hard, drinking. And so, and driving and getting him back from my parents' house, and just, I don't know, maybe it doesn't sound that hard, but it just emotionally, you know, emotionally ate me up, right? Like between, and so we didn't get home until like 10 because we had to go get him from his grandparents. And, um, you know, um, it was just a hard day night. It was like one emotional like roller coaster at another. And of course, like the humans that we're going through facing the news is hard too. But as moms, we have a hard time. Like, did you know there's these studies that say like, so we know that when we grow a baby inside of us, their DNA actually ends up in our brain. And so that's why sometimes they think, like, let's say somebody says something really bad about your kid, or whether it's somebody you don't know, or even like your husband or your partner or something like that, you feel like you're taking it personally. Some people will think it's just because, we're made to feel like, we're the mom, so we failed. But some studies are coming out saying that it's likely because we have their DNA in our brain. And so it's a way to make us protect them more, right? Like we actually feel like it's us being attacked. So I don't want to sound narcissistic because it's happening to them, but like as a mom, we also feel like it's happening to us in a different way. Like we feel it alongside of them, right? Like we feel the ultimate responsibility to like take it away and make it better, right? That is so good. And so it's um, it's hard to watch them go through it and to have to like be there, and like, you can't just take it away. It's something that they have to do the work for themselves. Um, but so it may just, and then like waking up in the morning and like facing everything that happened the night before, and it doesn't, like, that wasn't yesterday and now today is today. And I have to go to a fucking dermatologist appointment for like a mole check today, and I'm doing it willfully because I can't look at. I wanted to look at one on my back, but I don't like I'm not excited to go show my body to somebody. Like there's nothing wrong with my body, but like just emotionally, I'm not in the mood for a stranger to like look at me half naked. Right? Like nobody wants to do that. No one's like, yeah. Um, and so, I'd rather just stay home. But it took me like a month and a half to get this appointment, so I know if I reschedule, it'll be another 2 fucking months. Um, so it's just kind of been like, oh, whirlwind. But usually when things go wrong, they happen in a flush. So it's just been a couple hard days, and my son lives here, so it's already been the morning shame of waking up and being like, oh fuck, because he's on the couch now. But he has a fifth wheel that he lives in, like a travel trailer out here on the land. But and sometimes it's hard, and I'm sure every mother knows this. But it's hard because like when you're trying to take care of like your own health, but also like you're entirely responsible for like your children's health. And then like if you add on top of that, I'm like, oh, I also run this like massive business myself. I'm like, fuck. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, April, you get to have like a breakdown in the bathroom now and then because it's a lot. And when they get older, it doesn't stop. I see a lot of people talk about that. It doesn't mean that things don't get easier in different ways and things that don't change, but I see. But oh, I got cut off for a second. That was weird. They're like, your talk is too somber. Right, but I think it's important. I think like my main advice to anybody who wants to like be a public herbalist or a public anything, honestly, is to be a real human. To let people know that like you have hard days, that like you have issues, that like your family has issues, that you're like not perfect in some like romantic fairy tale like posed family photo where everybody's wearing white in a field. Right? Like you're like, oh, yesterday, last night I drove home with my son puking into a feed bucket behind me, and then I, right, like I just, it's real life that people experience. And admitting this stuff about yourself or about your family or your experiences doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't lose you any respect. And if people don't take you seriously after being that, they never were taking you seriously to begin with. You were just a prop to them, right? Like, if you're too much as you are, then that person doesn't need to be in your, like, sphere, even if it's just social media. And so it's just really, I don't know. I think people always ask me like how I grew things so big or how'd you do this. I'm like, what's crazy is on Instagram, I've talked about it before. In the beginning, I barely even talked about herbs. Not really. I just talked about like my trauma and the shit that I was going through, and it like, the stuff that we're supposed to be hiding about ourselves these days. And so it really, it really blew up. It went big. Um, but yeah, it just fuck, it's important, and teenagers are hard even when they're almost 21-year-old teenagers. That's our concern. We talk about that sometimes. Like right now, he has restricted access to alcohol, meaning he has to rely on people to get it for him. But he'll be 21 in October. Right. And I wish there was something you could do, and I don't know why they don't have this. Like, if you were an alcoholic, you could have some sort of symbol on your ID, and then they always have to ask for IDs, even if you look over 40, because then they can see on there that they shouldn't sell you alcohol. I know free will and all of our rights and shit like that, but like if you thought about it like a disease, because everybody always says it's a disease, why don't you have a fucking life alert type thing somewhere that lets people know socially that they can't serve you alcohol? I think that would go a long way to helping people, not relapse when they're having a hard time. Um, but the last time he quit, I mean, I took him through a withdrawal ourselves, and then we were working on getting him into a facility, and it took so long to get in there that he'd been clean from drinking for a month and 2 weeks, and they were like, oh, yeah, sorry, you can't come here now because you're sober. So, like, I can only take him somewhere if he's like actively in the throes of drinking. But there's no AA around here. I looked. The only thing they have is Zoom. But like my kid, he's technically what, Gen Z? I don't know anymore. I can't keep up. But he didn't grow up on like devices. He doesn't like computers. He doesn't like. He's not gonna go to a fucking Zoom meeting. I had to help him send an email the other day. you know, but that's just so crazy. Uh, but some people are freaking out about the concept of having a mark on you. Well, I mean, like, people aren't addicted to abortions. Someone's like, no, you can't put something on your ID because then you'd have all these, like, other restrictions. But, like, nobody's like, oh, I'm a recovering abortion addict. It's not the same as somebody needing to, like, have a symbol letting people know that they're an alcoholic or they're a heroin addict or something like that, so they can't have this medication or, alcohol that they can just buy over a counter. Totally not the same. But for him, I know that what he really needs, and I say this as this is what he does for a living, it's like when he's not fishing, when he's not on the land, that's it. His mind, he says, the only time his mind goes quiet, which I can relate to because he has mind neurodiversity, is when he is when he is by the river. And I get that. My mind really only slows down like when I'm in the woods. Um, but I think that for the people that are freaking out in the comment section about the concept of having to like identify as an alcoholic, you've probably never dealt with like the ramifications of like last night my son drove in a truck that's big enough to smash any car most of you drive, while he vomited out the window, and then he ran into a planter in my parents' yard. He could have easily gone through their wall. And so if you don't think that that type of person needs some sort of barrier to get access to the substance that's destroying their life, you've just never dealt with it. Right? Like, that's fucking crazy. Like, right now, it'd be amazing if there was, like, some way for people to be like, oh, you can't have opioids because you're an addict in this way. Oh, you can't have. And it doesn't mean that they won't access it elsewhere. It would mean that, like, when my kid was 21, he couldn't walk into a bar, right? That he couldn't go buy liquor in a store or beer because he's like got a documented drinking problem, right? And so it is like crazy when like so weird what people choose to fight against. Also, this isn't a real thing. It was just like a concept of like it would really help people like not it would really help people like not slip as easy, especially when it comes to things that they can just go to a store and buy, you know. But So, it's scary because he could have killed somebody or hurt himself. The thing about drunks is they almost never die in the wrecks because they're so limber, right? But the person they hit does. But yeah, so it's been a hard day, and this probably isn't the most pleasant tea time, but real human, right? He'll be okay though. It's not like we haven't done this rodeo before. Like we don't just pick up and move on. And I think the most important thing is like there's no like berating, right? Like we're not like we're so fucking disappointed in you or anything like that or yelling at him. That doesn't help, I'm like you can express that you're disappointed without having to like demean somebody too, and so we had that little bit of a discussion this morning, and I was like, I made you a breakfast sandwich, and he's like, I'm not hungry. I'm like, I didn't ask if you were hungry. It's about as assertive as I get, but I'm like, fucking eat. But it's just what you have to do, but I always kind of like, it's really crazy when people like shame people for like making a mistake or like relapsing or a bad decision, or like when you're a kid you make all kinds of stupid things and you're pretty fucking confident that it's the right thing to do, and it's really hard to come back from that when like if you come back from it your adult peers are like ridiculing you and mocking you or belittling you or attacking you and telling you that you were stupid and wrong. It doesn't make you like let a person bow out from their embarrassment without the need to like put salt in their wound. So he can't go anywhere for the next 2 weeks. Don't care. He can walk around here, he can be on the river here, but he can, but it doesn't even have to be like, he didn't fight it last time, and just you're home, we have to like get back on track. And it's not even like being grounded because he's 20, but, and just talk about how we're feeling and why we do a thing and what we can do instead. And, be outside, lots of outside work to do. Keeping people busy, I think, is important, especially kids. I still live somewhere where there's nothing for kids to do, and they get pulled into stuff easier. But I mean, alternative is I'm living in a city. There's lots to do, but kids still get in trouble. Um, but I see a lot of people asking me like health questions today. I'm not up for it. I mean, I could, but I've got so much in my mind about my kids' health right now that I'm probably not gonna get to your questions today. I will be doing like every Friday for tea time is a dedicated herbal Q&A. So for those of you who are like, I got a question, like that day is like, I mean, I answer questions throughout tea times all the time, but like that day I specifically dedicate to Q&As, you know. So it's just rough. It was crazy when we first discovered it because he had actually been hiding his alcoholism. Like his destructive ex had like started drinking to sleep and like making him drink, and so we didn't know that he was drinking. He was hiding it really well. We didn't found out until about 6 months, maybe 8 months ago, and well, last fall, and It was so bad that he had no potassium in his body when we took him to the emergency room. Like, they were like, holy fuck, like, you're about to have a heart attack from having no potassium. So he had to be like on a potassium IV, and like, but you, like, you wouldn't know it looking at him, you know. But I, you know, and then just because shit is always interesting around here, I start working on him with like coconut water and stuff, right? And then he takes like 3 cans of coconut water with him to the river one day to go fishing, and you can drink that much in a day if you space it out, but he pounded all 3 of them. He said he was just so thirsty. He drank them all in like 30 minutes, and then then we had to take him to the hospital because he had too much potassium in his body. And I was like, right, you're like, Jesus, can't win for lose, and that stuff is just hard, and and I know that some people might be like, oh, you're talking about how your kids' problems publicly, but I don't know. I think that it also takes away the stigma because kids these days anymore, it's like, it's really weird because they want to talk about like all their problems and stuff, like on TikTok and things, but like when it comes to like actually talking about them and like admitting to them or allowing other people to talk about what's happening and how it's impacting you as a parent or a family member or a spouse or whatever, like you're kind of like shunned from doing that. And I'm like, no, ain't none of that shit happening around here because it helps us see that like there are ramifications. Like the parents who are quiet all the time and don't, like, you talk about your kids having problems amongst yourself and you talk about the problems your kids are having, like at like why it's disappointing you, but when you don't talk about how it's impacting you as a human being, I swear to God that's like a recipe for narcissism. Like not talking or like letting your children know that you are also a human and that like their behaviors or even your spouse or whoever is like impacting you, and like you're always just in it for them. And of course, choose age appropriateness conversations, right? And don't always make it about you because they are existing in it, but like being like, hi, I am also human. I know you think I'm invincible because I'm your mom or your whatever, but I actually have limitations. And like how you're acting is being harmful to yourself, but it's also like really harming me emotionally, and it's making it hard for like me to be like more present. So like could we work on like how we can process our emotions differently, or like it's important that that I'm allowed to talk about this with people because like I'm a human and I need to like let this experience out. Those are all things that I didn't really have as a kid, and that were like really important for me to like do for my kids even if they don't always like me for it. To an extent, but like also as they grow, because my daughter's almost 17 and my son's almost 21, even for all their issues they face, they're exceptionally emotionally intelligent. Like they have the capacity to like understand things like that because I've never felt the need to like wait until they were quote unquote an adult to talk to them about my feelings or what I was experiencing in life. And so it's just I don't know, I think it's important. I think it's important that we do it not just with our kids, but like with the people around us, and we don't even have to do it from like a place of like shaming or guilting or like making them like you can do that in a narcissistic way too. You have to be careful that you're not like everything you do affects me and I'm impacted and I'm upset because that's narcissism, right? But you can be like, hey, we're not doing well right now. Like you're going through this and like it's also impacting me and it's making me feel this way. Like there's better ways to do it where you don't make yourself like the center of everything. But like god damn did I have a hard time yesterday watching them go through it and like feeling like the weight of the world on my shoulders to like save my children. Like I'm always facing this type of stuff, but when it happens back to back on the same day, you're like, fuck, take turns, right? Like, but it'll be okay. And I remind myself often of how far we've already come, right? And so it's really easy to feel the way I do right now, and then I just try to remember like, well, it was much harder a couple years ago, which doesn't negate how I'm feeling now, but it helps me tap in and maybe feel and understand that like I do actually have the capacity to survive this. I will be fine. Tomorrow we'll get on about our life, and but I think it's also important that we give ourselves um, the time we need to experience what's hard. We're so, as a society, um, pushed into like instantly resolving our emotions and like, oh, and we look at our trauma as if it is something so horrendous. All we need to do is fix that trauma and we'll be better, and push that over here. This is good, that is bad, don't want to feel that anymore, give me this pill. Versus being like, that trauma, this pain, that experience is literally a part of who I am. And when it comes to trauma, it's even on a genetic level. You will pass some of this stuff on just from epigenetics, right? But it doesn't mean that it's bad. And I swear to God, people do more harm trying to heal themselves and remove this bad part than they do if we simply accept that these traumas happened, they impacted us. I'm understanding. I understand why I might behave that way sometimes. I give myself grace and compassion. And like, I might have a hard day now and then. I might have a bunch of hard days in a row for a while. I might, and it's the struggle against that. It's the struggle of allowing ourselves that space to feel and to experience, and thinking that it needs to be washed clean and we need to get back to it and pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and be fucking productive. That's what's making people depressed and full of anxiety and like not understanding how to move forward, right? Because we're told to lock everything up in a box and medicate it away. But um and so I just don't subscribe to any of that shit. And one of the ways that like I got myself off of disability, like I was on disability for severe CPTSD. They put me on benzos for a year. I was fucking agoraphobic for a time, although that was from the medication. Um, I was a hot mess, and a lot of it, every inch of it, came from me not facing, but also me not accepting those parts of me. Just trying to be like, no, 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 I don't want to feel that. I don't want to experience that. I don't want to talk about that. I want to be put together and not a real human. And the second that I was just like, fine, I just burst open and I'm like, I'm going to tell the internet about what I'm going through and how I feel, and that it's okay, and fuck you if you don't like it. Just go away. And I was really ruthless for a long time towards myself, just like really like ripping into like all these like inner narratives and outer narratives and like challenging everything. And it's how I blew up on Instagram. But I don't know. Here I am. I've been off disability for a decade. I don't have anxiety attacks anymore, really. I haven't had a panic attack in like a very long time. I built my own business. I got my family out of poverty. I faced my shit, and I still have bad days. you know? But honestly, the only thing I really did was like allow room for it and face it and like, you know, deal with it as it comes, which is all I can do for yesterday and today when somebody has to look at the moles on my body. It's just, it is what it is. Some days will be harder and some days will be easier, but the most important thing is that today, when I came here and I talked with you, I was real about it. I could have masked, and I could have been like, oh, we're having tea time and everything's fine and blah blah blah, and like completely distracted. But it wouldn't have helped me. I would have got off of here and felt just as down, just as like overwhelmed, versus being like, I've now just had a conversation with 200 plus friends about how I'm feeling today and what I'm facing, right? And I'm gonna walk away from here and I'm gonna like make sure I don't stink because I'm going to a doctor's office. And then, we're going to go to Home Depot and get the last little things we need for a project we're finishing. And then, we're going to eat these really tasty burritos from this place over there that we're always excited about. Like, that's what we're going to do. And, like, maybe tonight I cry. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow I have a bad day. I don't know. But I know that I'm a human. And all I can do is exist with that fact. And part of that is just, I don't know, dealing with it as it comes. So, thank you for, hanging out during my emotional support tea. It means the world to me that you're here with me. If you would like to support my capacity to be a real human that faces, real issues with their kids and life in general, consider becoming a member. It's just a way to throw me a couple bucks a month. If I upload videos early, like outside of a weekend, you get early access to them. If you can't afford to become a member, I want you to know that that's okay. These videos are released on weekends when I get them uploaded. So it's not like you'll never see it. There's nothing behind a paywall. It's just a smidge of a time wall, right? You can also call something home from my apothecary. I make all kinds of things like herbal capsules, tooth powders, deodorants. I got books, all kinds of stuff. And for the people who watch these videos, you can use the code TEATIME, TEATIME, to save 10% on your first purchase, or if you've never used the code before. But also, liking, commenting, subscribing, turning on notifications, and sharing is really important to help get my work out there, and it's just as valuable as supporting me financially. Sharing is really important too because it helps other people realize that they are also smart enough to learn herbalism, just like you are, and be a real human with me and all that kind of stuff. So, thank you so much for being here with me and always allowing me the space to be a real human. I highly appreciate it, and I will see everybody tomorrow morning. Bye, folks.